G'day everyone. Welcome to the season update webinar for March. Today we've got another special guest, Mike Henry from Simplot. Fertiliser is a big hot topic at the moment. With the price of fertiliser, particularly urea, increasing, and also the cost to apply it with diesel. So we've heard a fair bit about applying fertiliser, especially for pastures this time of year. But we want to have a look at and start talking about fertiliser application when it came to your spring and summer cropping scheduling. And Mike, we've worked with Mike for a while now when it comes to fertiliser, and he's probably at the forefront in terms of how he's using the data that we collect and he uses to come up with fertiliser grid, variable rate fertiliser application, grid mapping, things like that. So I thought it'd be fantastic to get Mike on to have a bit of a chat around that. So yeah, thanks for coming along, Mike, and yeah, welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me, Mary.
Could you just start off by just giving us a bit of a just introducing yourself, what you do, and then what got you and where you started when it came to looking at grid mapping, in particular with the fertiliser application in your broccoli regime?
So I grew up on a mixed family farm southeast of Cressy. I studied a Bachelor of Biotechnology at TAS in Hobart. Since leaving the farm, I've worked as a field officer in fresh market vegetables and berries, and I've been an agronomist and a field officer in vegetable seeds and processing vegetables. And so that's my current role at the moment as an agronomist and a field officer for Simplot. I manage all of the processing broccoli production in Tasmania for Simplot. And yeah, so I guess my journey with this started quite an embarrassingly long time ago, probably 15 years ago when I was still on the farm. I started thinking about, we went through a phase where we rationalised our cropping program and got back to a very small number of enterprises, and it made sense to me at that stage to start soil sampling by soil type rather than by paddock. So I just went around and drew a very crude map based on my knowledge of where the soil types changed on the farm, and then sampled according to that map, and then found quite a bit of variation between the different soil types, and so did a cheapskates version of variable rate application where I was just applying flat rates but different rates of different products to the different soil types. And I guess that was sort of the genesis of my interest in trying to add more definition to nutrition programs. Fast forward another 10 years, probably about 4 years ago, we started doing routine grid sampling on the paddocks that we were going to plant broccoli into. Over that time, grid sampling had become a lot more accessible in Tasmania, and the broccoli really highlighted to me variation in the crop, and I was really interested to understand what the drivers were of that variation, because that variation was having
Oh, I think Mike's frozen there, so we're just getting back. You there, Mike?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're right.
So you're trying to get every head of broccoli to the same diameter on the same day so that you can harvest the whole crop in one pass. So yeah, anything that affects the rate at which the crop matures, so whether that's soil moisture or soil nutrition, soil physical properties. Yeah, I was really curious to understand the drivers of that variation, and grid sampling was a great way to start to understand the variation in the physical properties of the soil and the nutritional properties of the soil. So yeah, that was one of the main things that drew me to it, was just to understand what variation existed in the paddocks that we were dealing with, aiming to even up the crops to try to maximize the yield. And it's easy to think that that is specific to the broccoli, but when you think about any crop that has to be harvested at a specific growth stage, so cereal crops, seed crops, peas, beans, any of these sort of things where you want to harvest it at an exact crop stage, if you can even that crop up, I think there's the potential to improve yield by reducing losses to shatter, by improving germination rates, and making the crop more suitable to being harvested in one pass, as most of our crops are.
Yeah. And so back on the family farm, and you're looking at soil type, nowadays, what are you using as the main tool to get an idea of that soil variability?
So we're grid sampling. We grid sample before we go into the paddock. We're looking at we've sort of refined a suite of analytes that we look at, but basically pH, CEC, not a complete suite of nutrients, but certainly P, K, micros, copper, zinc, iron, manganese, EC. Yeah, so the grid sampling is a great tool to understand what variation exists in the paddock, and then we're using variable rate fertilizer application to try to reduce that variation as much as we can, and try and bring the paddock up to, as much as possible, up to a common base, so that then we can use flat rates of nutrition in terms of the crop requirement.
Yep. And are you using EM38 maps or anything like that to get you a bit of a foundation or a starting point when it comes to seeing where that variability, that soil variability is?
Yes.
Yep.
So we were EM38ing anyway to assist with drainage plans, to understand where water might be coming up out of the ground due to soil geology. And then we sort of realized that by using the EM38, we could make sure that if we had vastly different soil types in a paddock, if there's quite a defined line between two different soil types, that we weren't sampling and mixing together those two different soil types. So we use the EM38 as a tool to guide the placement of the sampling points for when we come back to do the grid sampling. So if you've got a sandy bank and a clay flat, we try to make sure that the sampling points aren't right on the boundary between those two different soil types, and you're not combining the two different soil types into one sample.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. So I'm trying to share, pulled up paddock there that gives people, they can see a bit of an idea of what we're looking at when it comes to that EM38 map and the variability that we're looking at. So I guess essentially, it's something. Then do you go once you've got the map? I mean, the maps is a variability of soil type or differences within the soil, so water holding capacity, things like that, salinity. Do you then go, once you've got the map, like I said, it's a map of variability, is not necessarily telling you what's there. Do you go and then ground truth that and do soil samples based on seeing what you're seeing as well on the map?
Yes. Yep. So We also use satellite imagery to see differences in soil colour.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly ground truthing is a great way of understanding what the differences are. The map will show you where the differences are, but going and digging a hole is a great way of actually seeing what that difference is.
Yep. Were you seeing a fair bit of variability across paddocks, especially when it came to that? If paddocks that had, well, were you seeing variability in paddocks that had variability in the soil type, and were you seeing variability in paddocks that on the surface didn't have much of a variation when it came to soil type?
Yes, I did. I expected to find variation, but I was surprised by the amount of variation that I found. So, I went into it with a focus on pH because pH affects the availability of all other nutrients. So, my hit list, as it was soil moisture. So, improving drainage to try and remove wet spots from paddocks, even up the soil moisture, then evening up the way the water is applied. So we tend to think of centre pivots as being perfectly even, but on closer inspection, they have proven not to be quite as perfect as we like to think. And then the third thing on my hit list was to even up the pH so that we could even up the availability of all other nutrients. And what I found pretty consistently across the paddocks that I've sampled over the last 4 years, which I'd be getting close to 100 paddocks, I reckon, that I've grid sampled. They nearly all vary in pH by a full integer. So, for example, if your low pH is 4.5, your high pH will be somewhere around 5.5. So that's a serious amount of variation across a paddock. So it certainly confirmed what I suspected, that we were going to find variation. I didn't expect it to be that much. And then the variation that I've observed in nutrient levels is probably not as consistent. Some paddocks, P levels are reasonably consistent. K levels might be consistent, or they might be wildly different. I think if I think to some examples, I've seen P levels vary by almost tenfold from the lowest part of the paddock to the highest part of the paddock. And another thing that that probably surprised me, but in hindsight, I'm not sure why, is none of the nutrient maps line up with each other. So if you overlay, say, a map of the pH of the paddock and a map of the P level in the paddock and a map of the K level in the paddock, none of them will line up. They're all completely different shapes. And in my experience, there's no correlation between any nutrients or any of the physical properties of the soil. So the pH and the CEC don't align. It surprised me.
So if you got a map like that, how is it? Do you address that by just ranking the limitation, the greatest limitation, whether that be pH or one of your macronutrients, whatever it is, and you look to fix that first and then follow through, rather than trying to just solve them all at once? Is that then how you go along with that kind of information?
So it's certainly you pretty quickly come to the realization that you don't want to be vary rate applying 6 or 8 different products across every paddock. So yeah, it's often a matter of prioritizing what you think's going to give you the biggest return. I would, having said that it was pretty high up on my hit list, I pretty much always vary rate apply a lime or dolomite product to try to even out the pH. Then I would look at probably not just which nutrient has the most variability, but which is the lowest, what's going to be the yield limiting factor. But generally I would end up plucking out somewhere between 3 and 5 products that I would vari rate apply across the paddock. So, and generally dealing with straight products. So, DAP and sulfate of potash, muriate of potash, those sort of things. Yeah, I haven't got to a point yet where I can generate a blend that will. It's just easier at the stage that I'm at to simplify things back to, this is the map that I'm trying to even up my P level. This is the map where I'm trying to level up, even up my K level, etc.
Yeah. So I guess a big question there is, has grid sampling and doing these, has it actually improved your efficient use of fertilizer? And I guess a big part is, has it decreased, has it made it more efficient? Has it decreased your use? Has it increased use? What has it done? What's been the upshot of doing all these? I mean, what's the benefit that comes out of it that you see that if someone who wants to look at going down this path that come out with?
So I didn't go into it hoping to save any money. I just wanted to spend the same money in a more data-driven way. So so directing more of the same dollars into more of the yield limiting factors. So rather than applying a flat rate of a standard product, if P was going to be the limiting factor, directing more of those dollars into fixing the P, evening the P out, or if the P is fine, then directing that money into K or directing it into micros, or So I would say we potentially have saved a fraction off our fertilizer bill. Wasn't our goal, but that's probably just the way it's worked out. But certainly feel a lot more confident that we're spending those dollars wisely. They're being directed to the right parts of the paddock, to the right nutrients.
And are you seeing that evening up in your broccoli maturation as a result?
Difficult to say for sure. I did try to do some sort of half a paddock with vari rate and half a paddock with flat rate, but it was very difficult to ascertain any solid, objective data. But what I would be really keen to do, which I haven't done yet, is to go back and grid sample on exit as well as entry. And that's very easy to do because we've got all of the grids GPS logged. So we could go back to those exact same points and sample again. But you would have to do that at the same time of year, I think, to be fair, because with my example of the broccoli, we're only removing 20% of the nutrition of the plant when we harvest the head. So there's 80% of the nutrient is still in the leaf and the stem and the root. So I think, to be fair, you would have to go back once that has all broken down and been mineralized into the soil. But I'd be really keen to go back and do some repeat the process again on exit and just see whether we've achieved our goal of evening out the soil properties. But I mean, I've certainly been very happy with the crops since we've been doing it.
Yeah. And so I guess that, like you said, you have 1 year with a paddock, so you come in and out within that one season. Can you see those benefits of doing this to a paddock, saying, what you're doing with a single season, whereas a farmer's a paddock that they're going into every year, if they do it for 1 year, do you think there would be see added benefits in progressive years, evening out that variability?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. Because it's like any improvement that you make to your soil. If you improve your drainage, then that has an impact on your soil biology, on your soil nutrient levels, and those benefits stack on top of each other. So if you can get rid of the wet holes in your paddocks, if you can even out the soil chemical properties by evening out the nutrient levels, then your soil biology is going to benefit from that. So then you're going to get more mineralization, more release of nutrient from the soil. So yeah, I think the longer time has passed since you've made these improvements, the better and better your soil health is going to be in those paddocks. I would say, particularly for some of the more immobile nutrients such as P, copper, zinc, those sorts of things, you might only need to grid sample and variate apply, say, once every 5 years. Once you've got with those micros, it's quite easy to apply enough to last you for 5 or 6 seasons. So once you get those levels right, yeah, I think you would certainly see benefit a long way down the track for seasons and seasons to come.
So if someone listening going, this is something I wouldn't mind having a look at, having a crack at. I mean, we talk about fertilizer prices increasing, or the fluctuation in prices. It's quite volatile. This price of soil sampling hasn't gone up, or has gone up. It hasn't gone up in comparison at all. So soil sampling is getting a bigger bang for buck. Time of year, where you sample, what they're thinking about, when should they be doing this now, for their up and coming spring and summer program, what's the key things they should be considering now and planning for those kind of things?
So certainly I know the dry autumn hasn't been great for everything, but it's a fantastic opportunity to be doing some grid sampling, even doing surface drainage work as well, to get as much of that excess surface water off over winter as quickly as possible. But autumn's a great time for soil sampling while there's still enough temperature in the soil, but the soil is not waterlogged, so the biology in the soil is still active. A lot of the summer crop residues have broken down and been mineralized. The winter or cover crops are established but haven't yet drawn a lot of nutrient out of the soil. So this is a great time of year to be doing the sampling. I would lean more towards looking at the immobile nutrients at this time of year, because there's obviously going to be some losses to the environment over that winter period. There'll be some leaching, some runoff, hopefully not. But yeah, it's a good time to be thinking about P, zinc, copper, soil amendments, whether that's lime or dolomite or gypsum. Yeah, this is a great time of year to do it. And ideally, in a perfect world, you would be doing it at the same time of the year every time you do it, so that you're comparing apples with apples when you're looking at back over your test results over the seasons.
Yep. And so, if there's something you want to do, how do you, and you need support and help along with that, and the agronomist is one of those people. How do you take your agronomist along for the ride? What are the questions you should be asking? What are the things that you think you should, the things that you should be asking your agronomist, or things you should consider to make sure it's as effective as possible?
Yeah, I'd say the fertilizer prices are intimidating at the moment, but it's certainly not something that I would be considering cutting back on. I think there's still absolutely a return there. I think if you start thinking about trying to cut back on fertilizer, you're going to see that in your yields. So I think it's important to spend your fertilizer dollar wisely. Certainly not relying on your agronomist just to provide you with a rec. Look at the soil samples with them. Challenge your agronomist, ask them questions, ask what are the target levels and ratios that we're aiming for? Why are we using a particular form? Like why use MOP over SOP, or why use MAP over DAP, or, you know, ask them questions and just show them that you are conscious of these important decisions and the effects that they have on your soil health, and try and get away from just following set recipes every year. I know a lot of people still have a set blend. This is what I use when I plant peas. This is what I use when I plant grass seed. This is what I use when I grow potatoes. Challenge that. Look at your soil test and say, well, hang on, my P level is actually quite good. So rather than just spending those dollars on P, maybe you're better off directing some of those same dollars into K or into micros or into something else. So yeah, just challenge things, ask questions, say why have you recommended MOP when perhaps my EC is creeping up and I need to be conscious of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. Right, we'll start to come up a couple last questions, and I guess one of the main was, where do you see, or where do you want to kind of take this next? What do you see as the next step that you can take, that in what you're doing, and I'm aware that you're at the pointy end of this kind of stuff. What's the next step that you think you can take that will have the largest impact on your production?
So I guess something else that we haven't touched on is we're also DNA testing some of our grid sample points to test for soil-borne diseases. So we've found that a great way of generating heat maps for soil-borne disease in the paddocks and getting a better understanding of okay, there's a disease in this paddock, but it's limited to this one part of the paddock. So maybe we'll avoid planting that paddock. Whereas if you're taking a composite sample and you find, oh, yep, we've got this disease, we're not sure how widespread it is, we're not sure where it's high and low. So that's a great tool. And something that I would like to do in the future is try to overlay some of those disease maps with yield maps and nutrient levels, and yeah, try and get a better understanding of how those diseases are driving yields in the crop. I guess comparing yield maps to your nutrient maps is a great way of getting an understanding of which nutrients are critical for yield in your particular situation, in your farm, with your crops. That's something that is difficult to do with the broccoli, but certainly talk to your harvest contractors to see if they can generate yield maps for you. I know Simplot generate those maps for peas, but yeah, certainly talk to your field officer and let them know that you would be really keen to get hold of that data, and overlaying that with nutrient maps is a really powerful tool, I think. Probably in lieu of that in the broccoli, probably doing some targeted tissue analysis. So I've got the GPS points for the grid sample. So going back to those same GPS points and taking leaf samples and just getting a better understanding of the correlation between the soil nutrient level, the applied nutrient level, and the uptake level, and just seeing how those three things interact.
Yeah. You still getting your drone up much and having a look and using that as a bit of a look at variability of your crop performance or where to sample, things like that?
Yes, the drone is a great tool to guide your scouting.
Yep.
Certainly not straightforward to diagnose things from the drone, but it can certainly give you a great idea of where to go and look next time you go to the crop. It can be tricky with the Brock in that the drones, obviously, the big thing the drone's picking up is the leaf area, and we're not necessarily trying to grow leaf, we're trying to grow the head. So, and broccoli is one of those funny ones where there's not a direct correlation. You could have a really bushy, leafy plant with a tiny little head in it, or vice versa. You could have quite a flat plant without many leaves that grows a fantastic head. So, yeah, but definitely a great tool for assessing variability in the crop, targeting, scouting, those sort of things.
Yeah. Great. One last question, I guess, with this whole fertilizer grid mapping, EM38, and bringing all that together, is there kind of one thing that you see or that people aren't doing, talking about, thinking about enough in this space that you think we should just one thing that we think we should be looking at more at that we're not doing enough of, do you think?
I would encourage people to consider micronutrients as well. They're still absolutely critical to the yield of your crop. There's something that I've seen vary a lot from paddock to paddock, farm to farm. So it's certainly one where you could easily waste money on micros that you don't need, but conversely, you might not have to apply very much of these things to make a big difference to your yield. So certainly looking past just NPK could make a big difference for a lot of people, I think.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thanks, Mike. I think we've gone a bit over time, but only because I'd rather listen to you talk than me. And I think it's a really interesting topic. So yeah, for your spring cropping program, look at that. I guess crux of it. Look at that now. Think about that now. Plan now, without trying to insert ag logic at all. Talk to Ruben and Josh about that. Having a look at your paddock variability 3M mapping, that soil sampling side of it. They're a great resource to ask where to start, and they can point you in the right direction. So feel free to get in touch with that if that's something you want to get involved with. But yeah, no, I really appreciate your insights there, Mike. I think you've got a greater insight than most, mainly because you're working on so many farms, so many paddocks, so many soil types, and you've got, like you said, over 100 paddocks now where you're doing this. So it's a great font of knowledge. So really appreciate it, mate, and hopefully we'll catch up and in the future and see where you've taken it to the next step, because I think it's a pretty exciting space.
No worries. Thanks very much, mate.
Cheers, mate. See ya.
See ya.
All right, now thanks for Mike. That was found that really interesting. I hope you did too. Now we'll go on to our seasonal update. Righto, main thing was did we get our autumn break? So our seasonal snapshot. We'll have a bit of a look at the northwest. So if we start up with Wool North area, so on our sandy soils, as we came into April, things were looking so. Yeah, we had rainfall events, but those skyscrapers I mentioned in the previous webinar, that's what we want to try and avoid. We want to try and get back-to-back days of rainfall to help with infiltration. And it was if Mother Nature was listening, and that's what we got. You can see here that we've got those rainfall events that have been bulked together, have a big impact in that infiltration, as we can see there. So those back-to-back days made such a big difference. We can see similar rainfall amounts in the day, but once you start to get those consecutive rainfall events, it helps with that, particularly with dry soil, letting your macropores grab that water that's coming past because you've broken down the hydrophobicity that is between them. So a great bit of rain, great bit of autumn break in that north area. Same thing as we go inland a bit into our heavier soils, same thing. We can see that we're above where we were last year. Those rainfalls are having a nice impact, and as we can see down here, that pastures that water's being utilised by pastures as well. Not to the same extent that we would have come that November, December through summer, but that's because our day length's decreasing, temperatures are decreasing, so as part of that, our ETO is decreasing. So, but great to see that there's that rainfall through that part of the state. As we keep coming further south, again, that northwest coast seem to get that pretty much throughout. Now, that's what I'm talking about here. So from this Yolla site here, we can see this is bunched up day by day. We can see what the impact it's had. But if we do a bit of a zoom further in, so this is our sum soil moisture graph, we can see here that irrigation over that rainfall, over time. That's what we want. That daily irrigation, rather than those skyscrapers, just the big summer storm that comes along. That instantaneous application rate of that rainfall doesn't match our infiltration rate, especially when your soil's dry and it's a bit exposed because it's been grazed down a bit. This is what we want to see, and so that's when I say what's your rainfall worth to you. Understanding that is key to making sure that, number one, we've had an autumn break, and now we're getting that starting to get into winter refill. And as we come down a bit further south again, that's kind of replicated itself again there, those red ferrosols. And again, yes, we've got soil moisture in that top 20-30 centimetres, which has been utilised by pasture. So autumn break, fantastic, but also we started to fill up that subsoil moisture there, which is fantastic to see. So summary for the northwest coast, autumn break, tick. I think we've achieved that by our, the numbers of rainfall before Anzac Day. Yes, but also in terms of how our moisture's been stored and utilised in our profile. So our moisture is above the same time as the last two previous years, and that's due to those consecutive days of rain. That's what we want to see. And not only is it aiding in pasture growth, but it's refilling our subsoil. So if we go across the northeast, we got similar, not as much rainfall through that pattern coming through, but again, it has started to give us a bit of an autumn breakthrough there. So we can see that we have had a bit of an increase there. If we go a bit further inland on our red ferrosols, not as much rain, so it's kind of similar to where we were last year. It's all the pasture responses, all depending on species type. This one here in particular is a ryegrass, and it got a bit too dry, and that kind of just shut up shop compared to, say, it depends on where if you've got subclovers or your cocksfoot as well, how quickly they're responding. But on our lighter soils, we can see a bit more of a response there. As you can see here, while we didn't get as much rain, that has been utilised. So the bit of an autumn break, depending on your species and where you're sitting on close to the coast, but similar to where we were last year. So that summary for the northeast coast, slightly higher, above the same time as last year. Didn't get quite as much rain as that weather system that sat over the northwest coast. So we've got a bit of rain sitting in that root zone, but we haven't started to get into that deeper in the profile. So yes, we've got pasture growth that has come through that. So we've got that autumn break. How long for? That'll be the next question. How long we can progress that for? I guess we've had that milder temperatures as well over the last couple of weeks, which has helped that. So if we look to the Northern Midlands, this is where things have started to change. So around that Elizabethtown area, similar, they've got that weather system similar to what we're looking at Sassafras. Geographically, it's not that far away. So it's similar there, but you can already start to see the decrease. Through that meander, didn't get as much. That was more of a northerly system. They didn't get as much as there. So there's kind of how that moisture, that pasture growth continues on. We really want to see that follow-up rain from this weekend. Hopefully we'll get some, and then we come down to Hagley again. Not so much rainfall. Yes, it was enough to continue growth, but we really need that follow up to make sure that we can that pasture growth continues going through. And as we come down through that Creasy Longford region, the rainfall, it kind of decreases, and we haven't seen as much of that kick on as we did see further up north. And as we get the other side of Longford, that just the rainfall just hasn't come, and it's painting a pretty similar picture where we have been in the last 4 years since these probes have been installed in this area. So I guess a summary for the Northern Midlands: soils, similar soil moisture the same time as previous year. Less rainfall than the northwest coast. It did encourage a bit of pasture growth depending on species. So you did see last webinar, we did see some of that subclover starting to boost, some of that cocksfoot starting to respond to it. That was helped by the mild weather that we've had. But we do really need to follow up. And I think that was pretty much the what Rowan was talking about last webinar as well. We need that follow up rain. So seeing, luckily we've got that warmer weather, so hopefully we can have that continue on. So yeah, need a good follow up this weekend. So fingers crossed. If we go further south to that Southern Midlands, this is where it starts to paint a bit more of a bleaker picture. Pretty much not that weather systems. Nothing's really come through. So this is that sandy soil around that Campbelltown region. As we go a bit further down to St Peter's Pass, this is we're pretty much flatline throughout, being aware that this is how a lot of our soils through that Southern Midlands will behave, with that cracking clay. So really, this is going to be, we going to call this a couple of months ago. Any rainfall that we do get, it's really going to be stored down here in this subsoil. So we want to make sure that we get those consecutive days and a lot of rain to start filling from the bottom up. Similar story at Stonehouse, and go a bit further east. They did get a little bit of rain in this particular area, and it's been utilised, but nothing too significant. And then across to the Durham Valley, paints a similar picture. We've had that a couple of decent rainfall events, but again, it's that skyscraper you're looking at on the sandy soils where they sit hydrophobic and get a lot of runoff. On our heavier soil types, again, you can see we've got a bit of an uptick, but that's been used up pretty quickly. And if we go across to ooze, we can see here that it's had a bit of an uptick, but not enough to really prolong what we're seeing there in pasture growth. And then the Coal Valley, that had a bit of rainfall that the rest of the state didn't really have, but that's all being utilised. So anything now that we're going to get is probably going to be started that winter refill. So a summary for that Southern Midlands, that Durham Valley area. So soil moisture is similar, same time as last year. Like I said this last time, there's a nice tinge, but that's about it. It's hanging on in places, but most of it's gone. Really look at starting, when it comes to grazing, utilising resources such as farming forecasts. And now this one here is at Mount Vernon, so just near Kempton, which I've pulled off. So this is a resource which I really encourage you to go have a look at, in terms of you having a look where we're sitting. So just a quick rundown. This shaded area here is historic, so it's a 30-year rolling average. And these lines that predicted pasture growth of where we're sitting. So if we were sitting in a decile 5-year, or that that is what we call an average year, that blue line will be sitting above that, where that 90th percentile is. We can see it's sitting a bit low, and in decile 1 year, we can see where we're usually sitting, where our line's sitting quite below it. So if we don't get good follow-up rain, we're kind of sitting quite below where we are in historic. So let's hopefully we get some rain through this period just to keep us up around that at least a decile 5 years. So start to use these kind of resources to help you guide, if you need to start feedlotting and things like that. If you go across to the east coast in the Fingal Valley, I think the scientific term is bugger all. I think not much rain through that part of the world, which is not uncommon at this time of year. And inversely, as you can see back in 3-4 years ago, you can get those lows that can sit up there and give you a bit of rain. But this is just painting a pretty similar story to the last 3 years. And as we go into the Fingal Valley, same thing, you know, very little rain where we are there as well. And as we come closer towards that, the Midlands Highway, in Speyside, again, it's pretty much flatline. It's been exhausted and pastures haven't done, there hasn't been much to recharge soil or to kick pastures along, you know, since that end of summer or end of start of the year. So again, look, give you similar outlines. This is the Killymoon farming forecast site, so it's giving you a similar, if not a bit more of a bleaker picture, especially with our, you know, if I guess what this tells you, if we get a 90th a decile 9 year of rainfall from now, we're still sitting within a historically, you know, a 50 percentile of what would typically be historic, you know, so we're already behind the 8 ball when it comes to that. So again, utilising your resources such as farming forecaster, and but yeah, as we saw, the soil moisture similar to this time last year. As we go across to the island, so we'll start with Flinders. They got rainfall, some nice rainfall there, and from all reports, things were ticking along quite nicely, and that rainfall had, you know, a little bit of an impact, and you can see that that's been utilised. So again, some nice follow up would be good to see on that part. So that was that's you know, the middle part of the island. If we go a bit further up onto some of your lighter soil types, the rain gauge has decided to have a hissy fit, but we can see that rainfall there has been infiltrated nicely in that top 30 centimetres in the root zone, but it's been utilised pretty much very quickly. Now this past year, and this is probably one of the biggest I guess responses to that rainfall, and doesn't surprise because it's a bit of a mixed pasture species. This one has got loosely and integrated within the mix, so they'd be utilising that moisture very, very readily as well. And if we go across the King Island, that rainfall system that came through, yes, it's on that semi-coastal country. It's again, you know, that lighter soil type. It's infiltrated, which is nice in the top 20 centimetres, but used pretty quickly. So that follow-up rain will be welcomed. As we go down with the Bargara line, those more heavy soil types, we've got a bit of rain, we've got a bit of infiltration, and things have seemed to, as we saw here, the pasture there has seemed to slow down. It's gone into its dormant phase, coming into winter. So in this part of, you know, in Bargara, Linwood, those kind of areas, I think we're now starting, any rainfall we get hopefully starts to be infiltrated, start to become part of your winter refill. So your King Island, Flinders Island summary. Soil moisture similar, and it's, you know, slowly creeping up where we got to last year. Anything that's fallen within the past month has been utilised by your pasture. If it's one of those, again, you know, that a mixed species pasture, but anything else is kind of shut down and it's starting your winter refill. It's one thing that, you know, this is one that I want to keep tracking on, and keep, especially for King Island, is to make sure we want to get a wet winter, and make sure we've got rainfall exceeding average. And again, so for the April, we got bang on average. So fingers crossed, May we see a bit more of that greater than normal. Just want to finish off just looking at the long range forecast that BOM released last week, and just one thing that people have no doubt started hearing, and the word El Nino, and what that means for us. It's not something I'm just going to touch on it now, and something that we probably look at in the next webinar, a bit more of a deep dive into what that actually means. But here's, you know, this is off the BOM website, the map to see where the chance of exceeding median rainfall for the next 3 months. But mainly just to touch on, you know, El Nino, yes, it typically brings reduced rainfall in winter and spring, particularly to the northeast and northern parts of the state. Daytime temperatures are usually warmer, so, you know, you're talking about greater ETO. So in terms of, you know, how much moisture is being utilised, that increases because of the temperatures, and then increased risk of frost because of the clearer nights. So that's, you know, that's there on the BOM site at the moment, and that's where they're look, things are trending, and this started here in terms of, you know, super and, you know, things like that. But just want to pull this one up just to make you just a reminder, just because the word El Nino is thrown out there, doesn't mean it's going to be droughts and everything is going to, you know, fall in a heap. That this kind of gives you a bit of an indication about, you know, yes, things trend that way, but it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, there's quite a variability in terms of La Niñas and El Niños that have come and the rainfall that comes with it. So it's not doom and gloom and panic stations. So here's some other resources to look at when it comes to that. So on that same site that I showed you before, you can start to click onto locations now on the BOM site, and it gives you a bit of indication of that 3-month outlook and where you're sitting within your decile space where you are, so here for Longford, but also farming forecast. So have a look at farming forecast. So there's 40 sites around the state, from Bruny Island all the way up to King Island. So utilize that. You look to utilize that when it comes to your grazing planning as well. It's a great tool. So key takeaways for this webinar is there's been some good autumn breaks in the northwest, and we've even got to the point where we've started filling up the subsoil, which is great to see. Less pronounced rainfall the further south you go. I think that's kind of the trend. As we go further south, we're starting to get less rain, and so that autumn break is kind of it gives us a tick, or is it on par? Just really it really does then start to depend on pasture species type. There's a species type and what has responded, what hasn't. So really important to start having a look at what pastures are starting to slow down. And I think it's areas anything south of Launceston have missed out on an autumn break. So things have started to shut up shop. Just touching that El Niño again, don't get alarmed, but be aware of how it may impact, and in terms of the impact that it has, and having a look at the soil moisture graphs that we go through. What we want to do with those is to have a look, and it's not making massive wholesale changes in what you do, but if it means that you're looking at where it's tracking, and this is where really good record keeping becomes important. You say, well, I made this decision last year, whether it's weaning, destocking, whatever it was. I made this decision last year. I probably could have made it 2 weeks early or 3 weeks early, or maybe I should have held off, whatever that was. If you're looking at where we're tracking, especially with the soil moisture, you say, well, we're tracking pretty similarly. I made this decision last year, it worked, or it didn't work. If it worked, fantastic. I'm going to look at making that decision now. And it's just that tweak of a week or 2 or 3 that can make all the difference, not massive wholesale changes. So, but yeah, don't get alarmed. Be aware of how it may impact you, just to help you tweak those things as you go. And look for those resources to guide decision making. Okay, so look for those farming forecasts, sites, taught your agronomists, things that you can have a look at to help with those things. So, and so this. Just the last slide that I always go to. This is a slide, this is the weather station network that, which is actually out of date. We've now got a weather station down at Geefston, so we've extended that as well, which has been fantastic to see as part of the school farms project that has been funded by the hub. But this is something to jump onto, subscribe to, and to have access to those soil graphs and see how they're going. But yeah, thank you for joining. And yeah, again, thanks to Mike Henry. Found that really insightful. Any questions or anything along those lines, feel free to get in touch with Ruben or Josh. And yeah, to look at your soil sampling for your summer cropping coming up. So, but that's enough from me. Hope you can join us next month for our next update. Thank you very much.